The sky above planet Verne was calm until a fiery streak tore through its purple clouds. Alien nurse Vela looked up from her glowing med pad, eyes narrowing behind her visor. The trail of fire wasn't a comet. It was something else. Something. Falling, alarm screamed across the alien medical base. A voice on the intercom shouted, "Unidentified pod crashing Sector 7. Nurses and medtechs ran toward the landing zone, but Vela was already moving. Her curiosity burned brighter than fear. As the smoke cleared, a dented and scorched escape pod lay half buried in the soft blue soil. Vela pushed past a group of medics and activated the door override. With a loud hiss, the hatch opened. Inside, slumped against the wall, was a human male. He was tall for his kind, pale-skinned, his body badly bruised, cuts along his arms, and a broken leg twisted beneath him. His chest rose and fell, slow but steady. Vela scanned him with her device. "He's alive," she said, shocked, "but he's burning up." "He won't last long unless we operate," another nurse said. But none of the staff moved closer. Humans were rare here. Most Xelorians only heard stories about them: wild, emotional, and unpredictable creatures. Vela had never treated one before. "I'll take him," Vela said quickly. The others looked at her like she'd volunteered to hold a bomb. But she didn't care. She was trained for this. Back at the medbay, she placed him on the bio table. Machines beeped softly as scans ran over his body. Internal bleeding, damaged ribs, crushed leg bone. But something else drew her attention. As she treated the wounds, her scanner kept flashing the strange warning. "Heat anomaly detected, pelvic zone." She frowned. "Strange inflammation," she whispered. She adjusted her scanner settings, thinking it was a system error, but the readings were real. There was a pulse of warmth, strong, localized, and getting stronger. Vela blinked and looked at the area in question. She quickly looked away, cheeks tinting an unusual shade of blue. "No infection, no parasite. Then what is this?" She whispered. She increased the cooling gel in that area, thinking it would reduce the heat, but nothing changed. The warmth pulsed again. Vela jumped when the human's hand twitched. His head moved slightly. He was waking up. She stood back as his eyes opened, deep brown and tired, yet somehow calm. He looked around, dazed, then at her. "Where am I?" he asked, voice raspy. "You're safe," she said. "Medical facility, Verne Base. You fell from orbit." He blinked slowly. "Did I hit anything important?" "You hit the ground," Vela replied dryly. "But you're lucky, you're still alive." The human chuckled softly, then winced. "Ouch. Feels like I got stomped by a mech." "You did not. But you have broken bones and several internal injuries," she said, trying to stay professional. "We treated most of them." "Thanks, Doc," he smiled. "Name's Jason." "Vela," she said, trying not to stare at his face. It was oddly symmetrical, almost pleasant. Her scanner beeped again. The heat anomaly still hadn't gone down. She frowned and tapped the screen, making Jason look down at her confused expression. "Something wrong?" he asked. "There's inflammation," she said carefully, pointing near his lower body without making eye contact. "Unusual warmth in this area. It may be serious." Jason raised an eyebrow, then smirked. "Oh, that's not an illness." Vela tilted her head. "Not a disease?" "No," he said, laughing gently despite the pain. "That's just a human reaction. Happens sometimes when we see someone nice." She stared at him, not understanding. "Your body generates heat near reproductive organs when seeing medical staff?" Jason shrugged. "Not just any staff. Just the really beautiful ones." Vela's skin flushed blue again. She stepped back quickly, feeling a strange flutter in her chest. This was not in any of her training manuals. She cleared her throat. "I will adjust the climate control to reduce, inflammation." "Sure," Jason grinned. But it might not help. Vela turned quickly and pretended to check the monitors. Behind her, Jason chuckled again, then groaned from pain. "You should rest," she said, still not facing him. "There is much healing left to do." "Yes, Nurse Vela," he replied, voice soft, "but don't go too far." "I think you're part of my recovery," Vela said nothing. But inside, her heart was beating faster than ever before. Something was happening here. Something strange. Something. Vela returned to the medbay early, long before her shift began. She told herself it was just for research. Just to check the human's vitals. Just to collect data for her report. But deep inside, she knew something had changed since yesterday. Something she couldn't explain. Jason was still asleep on the bio table, breathing evenly. His bruises had faded, bones almost healed thanks to the regeneration patch. He looked peaceful, even handsome, in a strange and rugged way. Vela quietly began scanning his vitals again, as the scanner moved near his waist. The same alert flashed once more. "Heat spike detected. Pelvic zone." Vela groaned softly, already expecting it. She checked the med chart. No infection. No blood clot. No abnormal tissue growth. Just a steady warmth in one isolated area. She turned to her console and pulled up older data. Every time she approached him, the heat level rose. Every time she left the room, it dropped. "This makes no sense," she muttered. "Is it triggered by proximity?" She ran an experiment. She stepped back 5 meters. The scanner beeped and the warmth dropped. She stepped closer. The scanner blinked red. It went up again. She looked at Jason. His eyes were still closed. He wasn't faking it. His body really reacted to her nearness. But why? Vela saved the logs and decided to ask the AI assistant for help. "Medicore, compare data with known illnesses," she ordered. A smooth voice replied, "No matching illness found. However, the pattern aligns with data recorded under psychological arousal in human males." Vela blinked. "Arousal? What is that?" The AI paused. "Emotional or physical stimulation linked to attraction. Not dangerous. Often considered enjoyable." Vela's skin turned bright violet. She tapped off the voice output and stared at the screen. "Attraction? To her? No," she whispered. "That's unprofessional. That's not science." Still, her fingers hovered over the panel, replaying yesterday's moment in her head. His words echoed softly, just the really beautiful ones. She shook her head, trying to refocus. "I need clarity," she told herself. "This is for research. I will observe without emotion." A few minutes later, Jason stirred. His eyelids fluttered, and he smiled weakly when he saw her. "Morning, Blue Angel," he said with a soft grin. "I am not blue," she replied, confused. "I meant your skin," he chuckled. "It's cute." Vela glanced at the monitor. "Heat spike instant," she sighed. "Jason, I need to speak with you about a reaction." Jason raised a brow. "Oh no, not the inflammation again?" "Yes, it increases when I'm near you," she said, trying to sound clinical. "I need to know why." "For your health," he smiled awkwardly. "It's not a health problem. I told you. It's just attraction." She tilted her head. "You feel attraction to me?" Jason looked into her eyes and nodded. "You saved me. You were kind. You're smart, gentle, and yes, you're beautiful. That's enough to make any guy feel things." Vela turned to hide her face, now glowing. "But that's irrational. Your body should not behave this way in a sterile room." Jason laughed. "You think humans are logical? You should read our history." She opened her mouth to protest, but the words didn't come. She realized she was no longer thinking like a nurse. She was feeling. And feelings were not part of her job. Suddenly, the door opened and another nurse, Tally, walked in. Her eyes shifted between Vela and Jason. Still observing the human? Talai asked with a smirk. Standard monitoring. Vela answered quickly. Tali walked to the scanner, glanced at the readout, and paused. Another spike? Vela nodded stiffly. Maybe your presence is too stimulating, Talai said with a teasing. Smile. Vela didn't respond. She turned back to her console, but her hands were shaking. After Talai left, Jason spoke softly. I can ask for someone else if it makes you uncomfortable. Vela hesitated, then slowly shook her head. No, I want to understand, even if it confuses me. Jason smiled. You're braver than most scientists I know. She looked at him, really looked this time. Maybe the heat wasn't just in him. Maybe, just maybe. She felt it too, but that thought scared her more than any unknown illness. Jason woke slowly, like a ship rising from deep water. Blurred lights danced above him, and his muscles ached as if he'd been rebuilt from scratch. His ears caught the soft humming of alien machines, and the distant voice of someone speaking. Quietly. Then, a cool, soft hand brushed his forehead. Vitals stabilizing, temperature normalizing. Inflammation persisting, the voice whispered. Jason cracked open one eye. The blurry shape beside him slowly came into focus, blue skin, silver eyes, a gentle face framed by dark tendrils that shimmered in the medbay lights. She wasn't a dream. She was real. Nurse Vela, he said with a faint smile. Vela startled, nearly dropping the scanner. You're awake, she said, her voice a mixture of relief and something else she couldn't name. Jason's lips curled higher. You look even more stunning when blurry, Vela blinked. That is not a medical statement, Jason chuckled. It's still true. She tried to hide the glow spreading across her cheeks, but her skin betrayed her again, blooming with soft violet. She turned her gaze toward the monitor. You should not be smiling. You suffered major trauma, multiple injuries. You are still recovering. I smile when I feel safe, he replied, then added playfully, or when my nurse is beautiful. Vela's heart thudded against her chest. She had read about human behavior, flirting, teasing, emotional expression, but experiencing it firsthand was different. It felt like electricity dancing across her skin, but she had to stay professional. She cleared her throat and tried to change the topic. Your internal systems are stable. Your leg bones are knitting faster than expected. Jason looked down at himself and then slowly raised one brow. Is that cooling gel I feel everywhere? Yes, she said firmly. It was necessary to reduce internal swelling and inflammation, he grinned. You mean that inflammation? Vela crossed her arms and looked away. It is still present, despite all treatments. Jason laughed. That's not something you can treat, Vela. That's just attraction, I already told you. But it is illogical, she said. There is no bonding cycle between our species, no hormonal trigger. Nothing shared in biology. So why does your body react this way? Jason tilted his head, looking at her with a gentle seriousness. Attraction doesn't always follow logic. Sometimes it just happens. Maybe it's the way you speak, or how you care, or how you don't realize how beautiful you are. Maybe. That's enough. Vela opened her mouth but couldn't find the right words. No one on Verne had ever spoken to her like that. Her people didn't use such language, not even during courtship. Compliments were rare. Emotions were controlled. Feelings were hidden. But here was this broken, strange human smiling at her. Like she was more than a nurse. You should rest, she finally said, voice softer than before. You need time to heal. Jason closed his eyes briefly. I'll rest if you promise to be here when I wake up. Vela hesitated, then nodded slowly. I'll be here. He smiled again and let out a long breath, sinking back into sleep. She stood beside him in silence, watching the soft rise and fall of his chest. Then she looked back at the scanner. The heat spike had dropped, Slightly. Not because of medication, but because of trust. Because of connection. Maybe this attraction wasn't just a chemical reaction. Maybe it was something more. Something deeper. Something she had no name for. She didn't leave the room that night. She just sat beside him, holding the scanner in one hand and her racing heart in the other. Vela had read hundreds of biology texts in her lifetime, but none prepared her for what Jason said next. I think we need to have a talk, he said, sitting up slightly on the med table, his eyes serious but amused. Vela stood with her arms folded, her scanner blinking uselessly in her hand. About what? Jason tilted his head and smiled. About what's going on down there. Vela's skin flushed violet again. Your heat anomaly still has not returned to normal. None of the cooling methods worked. None of the sedatives reduced the temperature. I even tried exposure to sub-zero air. That explains the icy blast to my central system this morning, Jason said, chuckling. Vela, I told you, it's not a disease. You don't treat this with meds. You need understanding. Vela frowned. Understanding is not a measurable substance. It is for humans, he replied, patting the edge of the table beside him. Come here, I'll explain it. The old-fashioned way. Vela hesitated. Sitting next to a patient during off hours wasn't protocol. But she sat anyway. Jason took a deep breath. Okay, so human biology is weird, yeah? We're emotional creatures. Our thoughts and feelings are tied directly to physical reactions. You say heat anomaly, I say physical attraction. Same thing, different languages. Vela's brows knit together. But why would attraction trigger? Blood pressure increases in such a specific location? Jason gave a crooked grin. It's a survival mechanism. Nature's way of saying, hey, this person might be someone to bond with. It's not always logical. Sometimes it's just instinct. That's primitive, Vela said. Exactly, Jason nodded. Love is primitive. So is desire. So is chemistry. We don't choose it. It just shows up. Especially when someone kind, smart, and alien happens to treat you with gentle hands and a soft voice. Vela blinked. You think I triggered this reaction? I know you did, Jason said gently, but not in a bad way. Vela looked away, eyes fixed on the blinking wall monitor. Her voice was quiet. My people don't have this kind of response. We breed in controlled chambers, using gene pairing programs. There's no feeling involved, just function. Jason nodded slowly. And is that satisfying? She opened her mouth, but no answer came. No one had ever asked her that. Not even her own kind. I don't know, she whispered. Well, Jason said with a smile, then maybe this is your first lesson in human-style biology. It's messy, it's emotional. And sometimes it makes absolutely no sense. Vela turned to him, curiosity burning in her eyes. And does it always feel like this? This flutter in the chest, heat in the limbs, this electricity in the air? Jason leaned a little closer. When it's real? Yeah, every time. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The hum of the medbay seemed quieter than usual. Jason's smile faded into something softer, something honest. You're not just healing my body, Vela, he said. You're healing something I didn't even know was broken. Vela's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to reply, but her translator implant buzzed softly in confusion. There were no words in Xelorian for what she was feeling. So instead, she asked the one question she could form. Are all human lessons this confusing? Jason laughed. Only the important ones. Just then, the door opened with a soft chime. A senior medic walked in, her eyes scanning the room, then freezing on the sight of Vela sitting beside the patient. Vela, she said sharply. You are not authorized for personal sessions with patients, especially humans. Vela stood quickly, almost knocking over the scanner. I was collecting behavioral data. The medic didn't look convinced. This is not a research facility. Keep your emotions out of the medbay. Vela looked at Jason, then back at her superior. Yes, head medic, she said quietly. The medic left without another word. Jason watched her go, then turned to Vela. So, does this mean class is over? Vela sighed, picked up her scanner, and moved toward the door. But before leaving, she looked back over her shoulder. Lesson continues tomorrow, she said softly. And then she was gone. Jason smiled to himself, heart pounding. Maybe his bones weren't the only things healing here. For the first time since his crash, Jason walked without assistance. His leg was stiff, his side still sore, but he didn't care. His eyes searched for one thing in the quiet corridors of the medbay-Vela. She wasn't in her usual spot by the fail. Monitors. Her tools were cleaned and stored. Her shift had ended hours ago. Still, he waited in the observation pod, watching the glowing moons of Verne rise outside the glass window. Then the door opened. Vela stepped in silently, her uniform replaced by a dark blue cloak, informal wear for Xelorians. Her hair shimmered under the soft ceiling lights, and her eyes, tired but calm, met his. You're supposed to be resting, she said gently. I rested enough, Jason replied. Besides, I needed to see you before I leave tomorrow. She paused. You're cleared for transport? Jason nodded. Fleet ship arrives at dawn. They'll take me back to Earth. Fix up what your machines couldn't. Vela's throat tightened. She had prepared for this moment, but now it felt too soon, too final. She turned her gaze away. You will recover. That is what matters. Jason took a slow breath. Yeah, but something else matters too. She looked at him. Jason stepped closer and opened his hand. In his palm was a small crystal data bead. Vela recognized it instantly. A symbol of bonding intent. Not romantic by Earth standards, but meaningful on Verne. I don't know your customs, Jason said softly. I don't know what this means for you. But where I come from, we offer rings when we care. On Verne, I figured. This was close enough. Vela stared at the bead, her expression unreadable. Jason quickly added, I'm not asking for marriage. Not yet. I'm just saying, I want to stay connected. I want to see where this goes. You make me feel things I didn't think I could. After the war. I don't want that to end just because I'm leaving orbit. Vela looked at the bead, then at Jason. Her voice came out low. Do humans often offer connection after only days? Not often, Jason said. But sometimes. When something feels real, you don't wait. She was silent for a moment, then reached out and gently took the bead from his hand. On Verne, this symbolizes trust, she whispered. It's not given lightly. Then I'm honored, Jason said. She looked down, her fingers curling around the bead. But Jason, our worlds are far apart. Our lives are different. You live among humans. I live in structure, in rules. If we meet again, we won't be nurse and patient anymore. I know, he said, stepping closer. And maybe next time, I'll be the one taking care of you. Vela blinked, surprised. I don't require care. Everyone does, Jason whispered. Even the ones who heal others. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she stepped to the window, gazing at the twin moons reflecting off the medbay glass. When I first saw you in that escape pod, I thought you were dying. I never expected you'd disrupt my system like this. Jason smiled. I could say the same about you. She turned, her voice barely audible. Then maybe the anomaly wasn't in your body, but in mine. Jason's heart skipped. He stepped beside her, close enough to feel her warmth. Then I guess we're both infected with something new. She laughed softly, a rare, melodic sound that only a few had ever heard from her. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small earth medallion. Here, he said, handing it to her. A human tradition. Something to remember someone by. She looked at the metal charm, old, worn, but carrying history, a human symbol of memory. She held it like it was made of stars. Jason stepped back. Whether you come to Earth, or I come back here, or we meet in some dusty corner of the galaxy, I'll be waiting. Vela looked up, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. Then I will find you, she said. And for a moment, nothing else existed in the galaxy except a human and an alien standing in silence. With hearts speaking louder than any language ever could, the medbay was quiet, too quiet. Even the machines seemed to breathe slower that night. Vela stood alone near the observation dome, her fingers tracing the smooth edges of the human medallion Jason had given her. It was warm, not from heat but from the memory it carried. She shouldn't have accepted it, not as a nurse, not as a Xelorian, and definitely not while he was still under her care. But she had. A soft chime echoed through the hallway. She turned sharply. Head medic Dara entered, her long coat brushing the floor, her cold eyes focused directly on Vela. We need to speak, Dara said curtly. Vela straightened. Yes, head medic? Dara walked past her, activating the security logs. Do you know how many hours you've spent in the human's recovery chamber after official duty? I was monitoring his condition, Vela replied, keeping her voice calm. Don't insult my intelligence, Dara snapped. You weren't monitoring him. You were bonding with him. Vela didn't answer. Dara's eyes narrowed. You're a medical officer, Vela, not a child. Emotional involvement with patients is forbidden. Even more so with humans. Vela met her gaze. Why? Because they're different? Because they're dangerous, Dara said. Their history is full of war and chaos. And because they confuse you, your emotions are already slipping. They feel, Vela said softly, but that doesn't make them weak. It makes you weak if you let them in, Dara growled. You are dismissed from the case. Effective immediately. Another medic will escort him to the fleet shuttle tomorrow. Vela felt her heart sink, but she forced her voice to remain steady. He will ask for me. Then lie to him, Dara said coldly. You're good at hiding things, aren't you? Without another word, the head medic turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the sterile hallway. Vela stood frozen. She should obey. She should forget. But her fingers curled tightly around the medallion. Elsewhere, Jason was getting dressed, struggling to zip up the stiff Xelorian-issued tunic. His leg ached with every move, but his thoughts were somewhere else, on someone else. He limped down the corridor, expecting to find Vela waiting near the console like every morning. But she wasn't there. Instead, a new face appeared. Medic Zor, tall and stone-faced. Where's Vela? Jason asked, heart already tightening. She has been reassigned, Zor said. I will escort you to your shuttle. Jason frowned. What? Reassigned? No goodbye? It was not deemed necessary. Jason clenched his fists. I want to see her. That is not allowed. Jason didn't wait. He turned and limped in the opposite direction, ignoring Zor's calls. Pain burned in his hip, but he kept moving. He knew where she'd be, her personal chamber near the east wing. He stopped outside her door and pressed the chime. No answer. Vela, he called softly, please. I don't want to leave like this. Silence. Then the door slid open. She stood inside, her eyes red, her hands trembling slightly as she held the medallion. You're not supposed to be here, she whispered. Neither are you, he said. At least not in my heart. She stepped closer. They told me to stay away from you. And do you want to? He asked. Her voice broke. No. Jason reached forward and gently touched her hand. Then don't. Don't let them decide what this is. Not for me. Not for you. I don't know what this is, she said, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. But it's stronger than rules, stronger than logic. I can't breathe when you're not near. Jason smiled, eyes wet. Then let's breathe together. She pulled him into an embrace, awkward, tight, real. For a moment, they didn't belong to different planets, species, or systems. They were just two beings caught in the middle of something fragile and fierce, forbidden, but unforgettable. The morning sky above Verne was pale orange, soft and silent like the calm before a storm. At the edge of the landing platform, a sleek Terran fleet shuttle rested on its tall legs, its engines humming low as it prepared for launch. Jason stood just outside the ramp, a small pack slung over his shoulder, eyes scanning the medbay doors one last time. But she wasn't there. The breeze carried the scent of metal and ozone, but none of it mattered. He was leaving this world behind. Leaving her behind, he sighed. Yes, this is it, he muttered. A security officer waved him toward the ramp. He took one slow step, then another until he heard it. Jason! He turned sharply. And there she was. Vela ran across the platform, her medical cloak thrown aside, her hair untied and flying behind her. Her eyes locked onto his, glowing silver with urgency and something deeper. She stopped just inches from him, breathing hard. Don't leave yet, she said, voice shaking. I made my choice. Jason blinked. What do you mean? I submitted my resignation, she said. From the medical corps, from Verne protocols, from everything that told me not to feel. Jason stared, stunned. You gave all that up? I realized something last night, she said. I was trained to heal bodies. But you, she placed her hand over her heart. You healed something in me I didn't know was broken. Jason stepped closer. Are you sure? This won't be easy. Earth isn't like Verne. You'll be questioned, studied, maybe even feared. I'm not afraid anymore, she whispered. I want to learn your world, your people, your chaos. But most of all, her voice cracked, I want to be where you are. Jason reached out and gently cupped her cheek. Then let's be where we belong, together. She smiled, small and trembling. Is this how humans say goodbye? Jason chuckled. No, this is how we say hello to forever. Behind them, the shuttle pilot stepped out and cleared his throat. We have one open seat left. You two boarding or starting a space opera out here? Jason grinned. Both maybe. Vela turned to the platform one last time, her eyes lingering on the horizon. Her life had been structure, order, rules. But here, standing next to a human with a damaged leg and a bright heart, she finally felt free. She took his hand. They walked up the ramp together. As the shuttle lifted into the sky, the medallion he had given her swung gently around her neck. And in her other hand, tightly gripped, was the small crystal data bead, his symbol of trust, now shared between two very different worlds. Somewhere far below, head medic Dara watched from the shadows, lips pressed tight, but eyes filled with something even she couldn't deny. Respect. Sometimes, the strongest medicine wasn't science. Sometimes, it was love.